Hello and welcome to the King Street Cinema podcast. My name's Andy, and in this episode I'll be discussing with the cinema's very own James Rowe 1984 Ron Howard comedy classic Splash, starring Tom Hanks, Daryl Hannah and John Candy. That's one not to be missed, a film I loved growing up. We'll be chatting about that in just a minute. Just before we get started, I do want to mention a movie that will be showing from the 17th on the mainstream screen at the cinema. Challenges. It's from the director of Call Her By Your Name and the Suspiria remake, and last year Bones and All, which you may have seen at King Street. This movie is kind of a love triangle drama. Really good reviews all around the board. Like I say, I've seen it and it can back that up. It's one of those rare movies where I didn't really like or could relate to any of the characters, but it was so engaging that I couldn't take my eyes off it. It's 2 hours 11 minutes long and the time flew by. Great soundtrack by Trent Reznor, and real scenes in it which I think will be iconic in the future. And see it while you can on the big screen, especially for that sound. And that's from the 17th. I just wanted to say that. I was going to do a proper review of it, but to be honest, we've recorded quite a bit on Splash, and I don't want to bore you too much with my voice, but I will be mentioning another film that's showing soon at the end of the show. So now over to the intro music, then we'll be discussing Splash. James is with us once again. Hello, James. How are you?
Not so bad. How are you?
I'm all right for a morning. We record this in a morning, which is rare for cinema goers and workers to. But I will ask you, actually, son, about long days and mornings. How did the Lord of the Rings go?
It went really well, I thought. Yeah, everyone seemed very happy. I survived the whole day.
Yeah.
Didn't fall asleep once.
So you did all 3 4-hour versions back to back.
Yeah.
And did anyone fall asleep?
Probably. And I think a couple of people didn't make it all the way through, which also happened last year, I think. Ooh. But most people did.
That's good.
Yeah.
I've done both Blade Runners and stayed fully awake.
Ah.
I did hear one snore from someone behind.
Yeah. I mean, it does happen from time to time. Yeah. People nod off. Yeah, it's a very comforting place to be, a cinema. So.
And I suppose as well, if it's movies exactly. You know well, you drift off to.
And it's like, if it's late, you've had a long day. Can understand someone maybe just taking a few seconds.
Yeah. Or hours. Yeah. So we're here to talk about the 40th anniversary of 1984's Ron Howard's Tom Hanks' Splash.
Indeed. Splash.
Which was Ron Howard's first big splash at the cinema. I believe it was his first hit movie.
Yes.
Because in 1977, while still doing Happy Days...
The Grand Theft Auto, is that
right?
Yeah,
the Roger Corman movie.
Yeah.
He directed that.
Because he was having a go, which a lot of people did at Corman, didn't they? They sort of got their first attempts at having a direction if it's involved in the business in some other form, whether it's actor or doing other bits in different departments.
Yeah.
It'd often give people a go. So you want to direct a movie, here you go. Here's your movie for you.
He's been doing it since the 50s, hasn't he, Roger Corman?
Yeah.
And
we've spoken about him before in previous podcasts.
And his company's still doing it today.
Yeah, and he's still going in his 90s, which is incredible. Really.
Legend. Yeah. And in 1982, I believe, Ron Howard done his first movie for studio, which was Night Shift.
Right.
Starring Michael Keaton and fellow Happy Days star Henry Winkler.
Right. I have not seen this film.
Have you not?
No.
It's become a bit of a cult movie. It done okay on its release, but didn't take the blockbuster sort of status, so to speak. But it's kind of dated. It's about from what I remember, I have seen it on TV years ago. 2 guys run a brothel out of a morgue, I believe.
Right.
Hence Night Shift.
Night Shift.
So yeah, probably dated. Didn't take the world by storm, but I think he got a claim for it. So, and then 2 years later,
here we are, Splash.
Yeah, he'd left Happy Days by then. He might have done by the time he'd done Night Shift, actually.
Yeah, I don't know when Happy Days finished. Obviously, I saw it on television in repeats.
Yeah. But he didn't stay till the end. He did leave before.
I had heard this, and then there were like spin-offs, weren't there?
Yeah. But yeah, he left. To be honest, he left on not so good terms. But he stayed obviously friends with some of the writers who co-wrote this,
right?
And Night Shift, and Henry Winkler, who's in Night Shift.
Yeah.
This was a kind of a surprise here, made for Disney, but a bit more adult, and that it was.
Touchstone?
It was the first movie Touchstone released.
See, that's what I thought it might be. If it wasn't the first, it would have been one of the first. Yeah, amazing. Yeah,
and
so Touchstone, if no one knows, was the company. It doesn't exist anymore. That was owned by Disney, run by Disney, as to give adult, and films for not necessarily family friendly. Yeah. So for a more mature audience. Which this film is interesting because it's not necessarily that yet.
Yeah, I mean, you could. I think, but he was worried that Disney would edit certain things, and I think there was probably something they had on their mind for a while. And this is kind of much like Ghostbusters of the same year. It's not really a kids' film, but there's stuff in it kids will enjoy. Yeah. Kids liked it. Nothing too offensive.
No, not at all.
And there's a lot of things would go over the heads. But the thing that he was most worried about was the nudity. Yeah. There's hardly any. Yes. It's very brief and not sexualized either, which was a big...
True.
And... you don't see much, and as a kid, I looked really hard.
Yeah,
and I think it
is one of those ones. But right, this is. We have spoken about this before on the podcast. But yeah, it is certainly one of those films where, as a child, you do remember. If you did see it as a child, you do remember there being nudity in it because she's a mermaid, and it is a romance film, but it is done in a very sort of naive, kind of way. It's got kind of almost a child quality to it. She certainly does as a character, and the film certainly plays on that. And it is from what I remember, it's been a while since I've actually seen the film. I haven't rewatched it, so but remember it very fondly as being nice very, very Disney. And I remember thinking, not realizing that it was Touchstone, and not knowing that Touchstone was a part of Disney at the time. Not even thinking that, and then not even knowing that, but thinking in my head, it makes sense. This does feel like a Disney movie.
Yeah, I mean, this was one growing up that I didn't, in my mind, it didn't feel like a Disney movie. It felt more like, because of the cast, more something like Big or The Great Outdoors, because of John Candy and Tom Hanks. Do you just briefly go over the plot for people who don't know? It's very, very simple, really. It's a nice opening scene in the 60s, actually, with them as Tom Hanks' character and John Candy as kids. Yeah. And Tom Hanks falls into the sea and sees a mermaid. And everyone thinks it might be a dream or whatever. And then many years later, I'll really summarize because I want people to see it. I don't do too many. Sure. As an adult, he encounters the mermaid. Yeah. And hilarious... consequences, so to speak, with Eugene Levy or Lovey, how do you pronounce it? Levy, who knows she's a mermaid and trying to catch her out. That's the comedy in the film, and I think he's brilliant in it.
I have said the name wrong. It's Levy.
It is Levy. Did you say it wrong on purpose? I know.
Eugene Levy.
Yeah. Just briefly talk about the car, shall we? Because it's I said I really dumbed down the plot. A lot more happens in it.
There's a lot, and obviously characterizations of people like Tom Hanks. He has a job where he makes a lot of money, but he's very unfulfilled with his life, and he's something missing in his life. Yeah. And then Daryl Hannah, the mermaid, comes into his life, and things change for him. Yeah, I would add that when she's on land, she hasn't got the heart. Of course, it's not that obvious. But the comedy, a lot of the comedy comes from Eugene trying to soak her, so she turns into a mermaid. And there's some hilarious bits of that. I don't remember if Levy is a scientist or just some kind of nasty journalist or something trying to get a scoop story.
I think he's a scientist.
Right.
What I've done, I rewatched this a couple of years ago. It was one of those films I hadn't seen for ages, and it was quite hard to get hold of. I don't know. I'm not really a streamer, but I managed to get hold of a second-hand DVD of it and gave it a watch. That was probably, I think it was during lockdown. I think I ordered it then, and and I gave it a watch and enjoyed it. And then more recently for this, I watched it. There's a commentary by Ron Howard and the producer and I think one of the writers. So I'm looking forward to seeing it on big screen. I've sort of seen it, but recently, but not properly. And when I was watching it with the commentary, I was doing other stuff because I really want to see it on the big screen. Sure. I don't want to spoil it. But yeah, Tom Hanks runs a business. He's not very happy with his life. He's got crazy brother.
Yes.
Who shows up wearing ridiculous clothes and very flamboyant, played by John Candy. Yes. But just bring up to speed on where they were in their careers at the time.
Indeed.
Because Tom Hanks, it was his first starring role, I believe.
It is, as far as I'm aware, for the cinema. He'd done television a lot. I think quite a fair amount of TV.
Well, he was in the sitcom Bosom Buddies.
Yes.
He'd met Ron Howard on Happy Days.
On Happy Days, because he was
in one episode of that. Yeah. And he'd been in, I don't think it was a TV movie, but he was in a slasher movie.
Oh,
Who Knows You're Alone.
There's that, but he doesn't star in that. He stars in a television movie called Maze and Monsters, which was almost like a PSA at the time for people being so concerned about the effects of Dungeons and Dragons on their children. And if anyone is interested in seeing a really god-awful movie about the dangers of Dungeons and Dragons, watch that because it's hilarious.
Well, that's one that got a Blu-ray release a couple of years ago, and believe it or not, it sold out everywhere before I got the copy. Yeah. It was lilimited release, and I think
it is hilarious.
Yeah, I do really want to see it. But the same year, I think it was released just afterwards. He filmed Bachelor Party.
Yes.
Which was also a big hit. It was in the top 20 of the year. I didn't realise how big that movie was.
Yeah.
Two. Both kind of broadish comedies in a way. One romance and one just a sex comedy. It wasn't really
Bachelor Party is a sex comedy.
Yeah, it's I quite like it, if I'm honest. But that was one that I watched really young, probably just after this.
Amazing.
Because Tom Hanks was in it, and I thought same reason, because of Superman 3, I watched a lot of Richard Pryor movies and stand-up I shouldn't have done. Yeah. But so Tom Hanks, this was probably a bit of a risk for them to put him in a starring role. But the name in it was John Candy.
Certainly.
Who, although it hadn't really had a big hit he'd starred in, he was a massive TV star for SCTV.
Yeah. Same with Eugene Levy as well.
Yeah, they worked a lot together in and out of that as well. Yeah. But he'd been in the Blues Brothers. Stripes was a massive hit. Lots of smaller Canadian films. He was in a movie the year before with Eugene Levy called Going Berserk. Which I think was a hit in Canada. I haven't seen it. I'm a big fan of John Candy.
Me too,
but he got paid 5 times as much as anybody else for the movie.
Sure.
And was only on set 20 days. Yeah. And I think they shot for about 60.
Right. Well, I can believe that. I can understand that because, he's definitely the biggest name. I mean, I think people don't realise, I suppose comedy, people love comedy, faces. It's probably quite different nowadays, but because there wasn't so many massive comedic stars, the ones that were big. They were big names, and getting someone like Candy in your movie, even at that point, was a big draw. You know, that would help sales.
I mean, people really wanted to see him, and he was meant to play the Rick Moranis character in Ghostbusters the same year, and I heard that he wanted to do it with a crazy foreign accent. And they didn't want him to, and that's why. But he's still in the music video, the Ray Parker Jr.
That's right, he is.
So with this film, I know my stuff, don't I? But it's a great cast, and Daryl Hannah, who
of course
had been in a few movies, quite a few movies, but Blade Runner 2 years before was the sort of her breakthrough role.
Absolutely.
And this film sort of levitated her, and then she went into she was also the title character in Roxanne a few years later, Wall Street, and her career sort of, often it's one of those where are you now people, but she was in things in the 90s like the Grumpy Old Men movies were big hits, then early 2000s Kill Bill, she's in one of those.
I would have to say, because in the late 80s where you meant the movies you just mentioned there, Wall Street, Roxanne, these are massive, huge films of the 80s, like some of the biggest remembered films of that decade. And she was prominent in those films. And so if you are of that, your face is that well known, for then to sort of even dip a little bit, which she certainly did, it seems like a falling off a cliff. You know? Even though she continued work, absolutely. It wasn't like she'd stopped or anything. It's just she wasn't at that height anymore.
Yeah, I think it's more. Well, it still happens now, but it's difficult for female actors once they get to that certain age to get the roles.
Yeah.
And she was certainly hit by it.
Yeah.
But she was still in movies.
Yeah.
One I really like and kind of forgotten, High Spirit.
Yeah, High Spirit. Well, that's 88. So that's at her peak. Yeah.
Yeah, and she did kind of, after Blade Runner, that she done this. She did sort of stick more on the comedies. I mean, there was stuff like obviously Wall Street, but I think maybe her career was affected by she got typecast as the blonde female lead.
It's the Goldie Hawn thing, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So even if you want to do more serious work, you're getting offered more.
I didn't realise actually
comedy.
Goldie Hawn didn't star in a serious film till the 90s.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. Right. I picked the film up, The Deceived, and it said on the cover. I was like, wow, I assumed she'd done more, but no. And more recently. Daryl Hannah's been doing work as an environmental activist.
Yeah, that's right.
And something that might have affected her career or put her off acting was allegations towards Weinstein. She was one of the people who came
that's
forward
right. Yeah,
with
absolutely.
that. Yeah. Apparently in the promotion of Kill Bill 2. So it's about 20 years ago.
That's right, yeah.
Which I didn't know, to be honest, and I didn't know she was doing a lot of activist work, which is kind of cool. And also suffers from autism, which I didn't know either. So I think she does a lot of stuff.
I did not know that part. No.
Yeah. So and an interesting fact with her environmental things, there's a scene in Splash where she has to eat a crab.
That's right.
Not a real crab because of she's a very vegetarian.
Yeah.
But she thought it was and was in tears on set.
Oh.
Or she thought it was going to be.
Yeah, going to be a real crab. Oh, dearie me.
I don't know. But she was only 24 when she made the movie.
Indeed.
All really young when you look at it. Oldest being Eugene Levy, who was 38.
Yeah.
More well known now for, how do you pronounce it? Because it sounds like a swear. Schitt's Creek?
Schmidt's Creek?
Schmidt, yeah.
It's Schmidt, isn't it?
I don't know.
Up Schmidt's Creek? I think so. I've never seen it. It's a show, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a pun on up.
Yeah. I think it's Schmidt's.
A good comedy with his son and what's that? Catherine O'Hara, who was
again from the Second City troupe as well.
Yeah, and most people probably know him as the dad from American Pie,
of course. Yeah,
which films I'm not a big fan of, but I enjoy him in them.
Yeah, he's funny.
Yeah, he's always good, but never really been the star of a hit movie. But when he shows up. The one that stands out for me is Best in Show.
Yeah.
Brilliant in that.
Well, he's in, Best in Show. Yeah, he's fantastic. And Mighty Wind as well. He's very good in that.
Christopher Guest movie.
Yeah, the Christopher Guest films.
He's 38. John Candy, 34. Tom Hanks, 28. And interesting enough, Ron Howard was only 27, but he'd had such a career up until that.
Sure.
Because not just Happy Day, he was in American Graffiti, wasn't he?
Yeah, that was 75. That was 73.
73 was it?
Yeah, I think so.
And then this was his first hit movie. Got on to Oscar winners, and his next movie was Cocoon, which was a bigger hit than this, I believe.
Yeah, I would have thought it would be bigger, but because that was a massive film. Yeah,
that was huge. And now it seems, for a sci-fi, it seems really low key when you watch it. It's like it's not full of special effects. But there is, but not.
Yeah, but like you say, it is science fiction, certainly, because there are aliens in it, spoiling the film here. But really, it's about old people, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a movie that is primarily about old people, not just giving up because they're old.
Yeah.
That's the real premise of the film.
Yeah,
isn't it?
That's a cool film. I've not seen it.
Yeah, Cocoon's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
For other reasons other than...
Well, you're trying to... I always mention Steve Guttenberg. I was going to not mention Steve Guttenberg because we've already mentioned High Spirits.
Oh, indeed. You didn't mention Guttenberg.
You know what I'm doing. I'm weaving it in. I'm weaving it into...
but it was the 80s.
The 80s were his decade.
Indeed.
Yeah. So... it was made on a 11 million budget and made 69.8 million, which is a big hit.
Yeah, indeed.
14th of the year. No, it wasn't. It was 11th.
11th.
Should I go through?
Still, I would have thought it would have been a little higher than that. Maybe not. I would have thought, top 10, like maybe 8 or something. But 11.
Well, let's say 11. Purple Rain, which is kind of forgotten there, was number 12.
Oh, not forgotten, sure.
Well, as
Oscar winner.
Forgotten for how big it was.
Oh, yeah.
But when you look at the But the 21st big movie of that year was The Terminator, which you'd think would be higher. Bachelor Party made more money than The Terminator.
But Terminator's a sleeper hit. Again, it's another one of these movies where people obviously in hindsight think it's huge, but it was, I suppose you would consider it was made by Ryan releasing. It's probably considered an independent movie, I suppose. So, wouldn't have had much marketing behind it or anything in its initial run. Yeah. So
it made less money than Revenge of the Nerds.
Well,
and being a fan of comedy, All of Me, the Steve Martin movie, was 20th, but made $2 million more than Terminator.
There you go. I mean, seriously. Well, he was huge, huge name.
Great film. But I'm going to just go through the top 10. Go through the top 10 to get us in the mood for what was 1984 like.
Yeah.
Number 10, Romance in the Stone.
Classic.
Which is a classic. Was that Richard Donner?
No, surely not. No, it was
Robert Zemeckis. Yes. So number 9, Terms of Endearment. I think that won a lot of awards that year.
It did. That was the movie, I think, for the Oscars. I think.
The number 8, Back to the Good Stuff. Star Trek 3, Search for Spock. Number 7, which I thought was the number 1, was Beverly Hills Cop.
Yep.
Number 6, Kevin Bacon classic Footloose.
Oh yeah, that's one of my favourites of the year.
Number 5, starring the legend that is Steve Guttenberg, Police Academy. I bet loads of people hate it.
It's fine. Yeah. It's fine.
Number 4. Have a guess.
Oh, where are we? One of the Indiana Jones movies.
No.
Oh.
Shall I give you a clue?
Yeah.
It's The Karate Kid.
Okay. Well, that's a great clue. Yeah. Thank you.
Number 3.
Gremlins. Now, all right. So now it's Gremlins. And
number 2.
Now it's Indiana Jones. And then it's Ghostbusters.
And then Ghostbusters. Yeah. What a year.
Yeah, pretty good. Oh. Pretty good for your 80s. Moments for what we consider the 80s.
Also,
I mean, we are getting, by the time you're at to like 83, 84, we are now in the 80s. You know?
Do you think as well, a lot of those movies, they are classics, but were very much helped by just after, that's when everyone was getting VCRs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Around that time.
This is what I'm saying. This is the time now. Now we're really feeling what the 80s were to offer, even though things were before that, like the VHSs and things came out in the 70s. People they were getting more accessible, affordable. We're really now in the decade now where we're like, a lot of stuff at home, which is going to help just in general. And it did. People did truly, always with these things, but this was a great one. People really thought that video was going to destroy the cinema. It didn't at all. In a lot of ways, helped it.
Yeah,
which is very odd when you think about it. It seems like they wouldn't have done, but it did.
We've got more movies made.
Exactly. That's the point. Yeah.
Right? VCR story very quickly. It's kind of related. Ron Howard, the second series of Happy Days, the producers or whoever studio. Bought all the cast gifts. Everyone got a watch except Henry Winkler, who got a VCR.
Amazing.
A lot of resentment on the cast towards. Everyone liked Winkler apparently, but he was taken over the show, and that's one of the reasons eventually Ron Howard left. But I think it's really nice that they were friends, and then he cast him in his first movie.
Absolutely.
So I like that little story because it all comes around. I'm a fan of Ron Howard's movies and ones, but I like the comedy side of it. This, and a few years later, we've done Parenthood, which I think is a great movie.
Yeah, it's fun. In all honesty, we'd just talk about, obviously, Ron Howard and connection with Splash. I remember watching Splash a lot as a kid.
Yeah.
But the older I got, the more I realised I wasn't a huge fan of it as a movie. And it is really that it is very much a romance film. And if you are a romantic... If you are certainly someone who enjoys romance films, I would say this is probably one of the best of the decade. Of the 80s. So certainly, if that's your source of movie, do not miss this film. But I think as a child, a young person, that part of the story I didn't like so much.
I think that's why John Candy's in there. It is a romance disguised as a comedy.
Absolutely.
But a lot of the jokes work. Very simple premise, but I think that's why it was a hit, because it appeals to two fan bases. But I think because of the cast, because it was early work for them, it's remembered more for being a comedy. And One thing what hit me was, I won't spoil any of the plot, but the end credits, there's a ballad playing.
There is.
Normally, you watch Caddyshack and there's like an upbeat party song.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. I think as a child, because I remember that ending very well.
Yeah.
With the credits rolling and the music playing, and thinking, this doesn't feel like the movie I've just watched in a way. Yeah. But it was the movie I've watched. It's just in my child's brain, I'm not watching it as a romance. I'm watching it more as a comedy. Yeah. And at the end, you're very much given the fact that this is a romance. This is a romance. It has comedic bits in it, and it is overall very funny, but it is certainly a romance film.
Yeah, and even the opening scene where it's black and white in the guessing 60s.
Yes, would have been
old rock and roll playing.
Yeah, it's nostalgia.
It is, but it's pulling on the heartstrings in a different way.
Yeah, very Americana, very Spielbergy kind of way.
And I think that works in its favour for me. It makes it stand out from when you look at the other movies these guys done just after. John Candy and Tom Hanks starred together in Volunteers, a forgotten comedy.
Yes.
John Candy worked with Eugene Levy in Armed and Dangerous, another comedy, little bit of romance, but not a lot. Not really remembered, probably more remembered for an early Meg Ryan film before she got huge. And then there's things like The Man with One Red Shoe, Tom Hanks. And, it took Tom Hanks a while to get that. Well, until really he went more into drama. I mean, Big lifted him.
Again, sort of typecast in the 80s. I mean, I remember up to the point. So if we get to the point where he's starting to do dramas that are massive, so Philadelphia and whatever, which is winning Oscars for. Up to that point, which I remember very clearly, I just thought of him as a guy who makes comedy.
Yeah. It was Philadelphia was the one for me. I was like, and there's a Family Guy little cutaway scene where they're in the cinema thinking that Philadelphia is a comedy. Right. Distasteful joke, but that was a lot of people might have thought this is,
Well, I remember the marketing for Philadelphia very well because, of course, it was the time of the AIDS crisis was still in full swing. It was still huge, and as in the media, and this film would have helped a lot with that, with the stigma of it. And so well before I'm going to watch the film, which I did at the cinema, I knew exactly what it was. So you'd have to be a bit of an idiot, really.
Yeah, I think that was. But the fact they cast him, was kind of brave. It was a bit. Certainly, of course. It was a bit like a few years before casting Michael Keaton as Batman, for example.
Certainly.
I mean, he had done Bonfire of Vanities.
In 1990, which was a big flop, and I remember quite enjoying it. But I've only ever seen it the once.
I think that's I've seen it once. I thought it was okay, but I think that's one that is probably not much like the book. So, but that had comedy elements. But that was drama.
That's more of drama.
So I think he done really well to get the hit comedies and then get onto that. Whereas John Candy wanted to do that. Yeah. And never really got there. JFK was one role he done. But the sad thing is, by this time, so 10 years later, when you look at it, in '94, Tom Hanks was filming what was going to be his second Oscar-winning movie, the year John Candy died.
Yeah, sure.
But both stayed. They got bigger and stayed.
Absolutely.
Big names through there. Yeah. John Candy had a few flops, but Cool Runnings was massive, which was his last cinematic release, I think. And I think that he would have gone on to be quite a good serious actor.
Played a tiny little role as the announcer in Rookie of the Year.
Yeah. Do you ever see it was that Cinema Run as well. That was one of his.
I think that might have been his last one.
Yeah, but Cool Runnings was the last big.
Oh yeah, sure. As a more of a role. Yeah,
but I think they pushed the marketing with him more because he'd passed away. But he's one of the main roles. He's much like with Splash. He's the draw for that film, actor-wise.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Without question. I mean, obviously, just Tom Hanks again. Just thinking of Big, the film that really made him a star. I mean, Big is a comedy, obviously, but it's not. It's very dramatic. It's very much a drama as well, and I think that's very important for people who would have looked at that, noticed his ability, and gone right. He can. I mean, he was nominated for an Oscar for that film.
He was, yeah.
It certainly would have been the one that people would have looked at and gone, right. He can do more than just be the funny man.
If you want to see how good he is in Big, watch that and then watch Vice Versa, where Judge Reinhold, who is a fine comedy actor in my opinion, not one of the best. But
he's not a lead though.
No, but him playing a child. And the worst one is Corey Feldman playing an old man in I forget the name of it. There's a body swap one.
Yeah.
Tom Hanks just excels, and there's 18 again as well, where the George Burns one.
Yeah.
Where it just looks like the actor doing an impression. With Tom Hanks, he is that child.
Yeah.
He's in a way. I don't want to sound snobby, but he's better than that film. Better than what you think that film.
Better than the premise,
because that is the standout of these kind of body swap type.
Absolutely, yeah.
Not that it's body swap,
but
might be. He might not have got where he was if it wasn't for this movie doing so well, or at least so quickly getting where he was.
It certainly helped. I mean, without question.
You got to think there's really 3 careers this really escalated. I'd put John Candy in that as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So and it's kind of not remembered as well as when you think of those big films.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, funny again. That's another one of these funny things. I don't know if we'd ever mentioned Jumping Jack Flash before, in context of films that are forgotten of the 80s. That was a huge film that you saw over and over again. Was on TV over and over again. You never thought that would be a film that would go away. Now it's almost kind of forgotten about.
Yeah.
And Splash to me, not as bad as that, but feels that kind of thing where it was something that was on TV all the time. You could not get away from Splash.
Yeah.
But it sort of isn't remembered as fondly as you would have thought it would always be.
With these things, there's usually two reasons, sort of copyright reasons, or there's something dated in it.
Sure. But they're both, to me, though Jumping Jack Flash is probably a little bit for mature audiences, but only slightly.
Yeah, that was a 15.
I think it's because of the swearing, because, it's Whoopi Goldberg known for, using the F-bomb quite a lot. So that's why. Other than that,
this is how big that film was. As a child, I knew the film and the Aretha Franklin version of the Stones song.
Yeah.
Recorded for that movie before I knew the Stones song.
Right.
It was just how I.
Yeah.
And it was on TV a lot. I don't remember it being in cinema, but I think I was a bit too young to remember.
Right. But it's just another one. I just thinking of film, like I say, if the films. This is one of those. Very much a film that's what happened to this movie.
Yeah.
As far as memory of it being just a film you just saw over and over again.
Yeah. Which is another reason I think it's great that you guys have got it for a 40th anniversary. When you look at the other films from that year, I mean, I was 2 when Ghostbusters was released. But in my 40 odd years on this planet, I've seen that movie in the cinema 4 times. I have not seen this.
No.
I've seen Temple of Doom in the cinema. I've not seen this. I think I've even seen Beverly Hills Cop.
I mean, maybe just going back to the romance elements to it, the kind of the theme of the film, perhaps people don't gravitate towards as much. Maybe.
Yeah, possibly.
These days,
the fact that
maybe
there is that little bit of nudity in it.
I mean, obviously there has been talk of it recently being, because it's owned by Disney, obviously, and it being on the Disney Plus streaming site, and it being kind of edited slightly for very nonsensical reasons as far as I'm concerned. But so that might be like the only thing that young people know of the film.
I don't know if it's on that, but there is an edited version where they digitally put like hair over
I thought that was the Disney Plus. Am I getting that wrong? That's what I thought it was.
There is an edited version of that. I don't know if that was done for TV in America or something.
Oh, right.
So if there's a YouTube video showing it.
Well, I thought
it makes it stand out more. It makes it look more ridiculous.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So that might be what people nowadays know of it, or more of it being censored.
Yeah.
For a PG movie, which is kind of crazy, isn't it?
Really? There is still talk of a remake. Brian Grazer, the producer, still wanted to do it. There was talk a few years ago. To 2016, it nearly got done.
Right.
And they'd cast it and everything.
I'm not surprised by that at all. And I'm a little surprised that they never made a sequel. And I'm sure that they did.
They made a TV movie sequel called Splash 2 T.
Right.
And it starred Donovan Scott. I'm not sure who that is.
Why did I miss
and
this?
Amy Yasbeck, who was in a soap, and she's Maid Marian in Men in Tights.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not big. It was a TV movie.
Yeah.
Much like Mannequin 2.
Okay. I think I missed that as well.
I haven't seen it. I want to see because it's maybe terrible. In 1988.
Okay, so not too far after. Okay.
I always find it strange when they do there's a big movie, and then they either do a TV movie sequel or a straight to video. And it is a money grab, isn't it?
Of course,
but it feels like it's let the fans of the film down a bit.
Yeah, I don't. Well, like I say, I didn't even know about this, and there are probably many where this has happened, where it's a huge film where there are sequels that I know nothing about.
It's probably to do with the cast and makers have moved on, don't want to do a proper sequel. That's what happened with the Lost Boys, you know. So that whoever owns the rights to the film want to make money.
Sure.
So and the sequel is different actors playing the same characters.
Yeah, that's never good, is it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying they should have made a sequel. I'm just surprised that the studio didn't go for it.
It was 84. I'm surprised there wasn't an animated series
or something else. You know. I mean.
We could sort of mention the music briefly. It's got that sort of classic 80s score. You've got some 60s music in there, pop hits, a real 80s vibe to the whole thing. I like the music in this film, but the special effects, there's practical special effects.
Yeah, I remember the fish side of the mermaid being pretty cool, looking good. You know?
Yeah, and there's a scene where she's in the bath and the sort of first change and
the transformation.
Yeah, and how it sort of shot that differently as a almost like a horror film.
Yes,
but interesting. I mentioned I don't really want to do spoil, but when she's finally covered in water for the reveal, it's deliberately shot like an assassination scene would be shot in a
right,
and it's really like over the top. And, but it looks really good. I really like it. I like the tonal changes in the film.
There are certainly tonal changes.
Yeah, and it kind of works for it.
They're very like clear.
Yeah,
it has that kind. Yeah, I remember. I think again for kids, I think a young audience, I think that it works really well. Yeah, because it does. Yeah, I think E.T. a lot with that. Like the changes from like happy, everything's good to being like, oh my god, horror. Yeah, you know, definitely had that feel to it.
Yeah, it does go from
everything's good to oh no.
Yeah, or vice versa.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just one of the reasons I think this movie holds up. Like anything from 40 years ago, slight things have dated, but nothing.
Yeah.
But it could have been a U certificate kids film.
Absolutely.
Or it could have been a sex comedy.
Yeah,
with the they could have gone over the top with the nakedness.
Absolutely,
and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think the balance is great. I think if it was reclassified, they'd probably make it a 12 now because of the way things are.
Probably.
But still, a 12 is the same as a PG because you can see it with your parent.
12A.
Yeah. So like anything, there'll be slight changes now. But I think this is one. If I was a parent, I would take my kids gladly to see it.
Yeah.
And I think they'd find it really funny.
Yeah. Well, you'd hope so.
Yeah. Whereas there's a lot of films like era, kids might not find funny. I think they'd find them too slow, or just the humour would go.
Like I said, I haven't seen this one in a while, so the pacing, which great that you mentioned because it's very important to the difference of pacing of movies over the decades. I'm sure that if I was to watch it today, I would very much enjoy the pacing because I quite like the pacing of a lot of 80s movies, but I would notice it as being like, this is probably a little slow for today's younger audiences.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I don't think this one is. No, a lot happens for a simple plot.
Right.
There's the different,
But does it happen fast enough?
I think so. Yeah. Right. It's strange because it's an hour 45.
Right.
Feels 90 minutes.
I was going to say, I remember it being like a 90-minute movie.
Yeah.
So 145. Wow.
Yeah.
More of a serious, mature film.
Yeah. Quickly, ratings. Letterboxd has got 3 out of 5, which I think is wrong.
I was going to say dead on the money, but okay.
IMDb 6.3, closer but still wrong, and a very accurate Rotten Tomatoes score of 91%.
Okay,
that'll be audience though, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But no, I mean for me it's a 4-star film because it does what it's meant to do very well.
I couldn't give it a rating right now because it's been too long since I've seen it. But I remember enjoying it, but not loving it because as a child the romantic elements put me off enough for me to not love it.
Did you say Roxanne at that age?
No.
I didn't. No, okay. That was the one that I think, because it's really funny. I think it's the film where my young brain was like, well, if a romantic comedy is more comedy than romance, I will enjoy it.
Sure, I understand, but no, I didn't like Roxanne. I didn't like any of those as you know, someone before my teenage years. So I just did not like any of those.
I think Roxanne was helped for me as well because of the novelty of him and the funny nose.
Yeah,
but it is just joke, a lot more
there
so
are a lot
Splash.
of jokes. I'll be honest though. I mean, you're a huge Steve Martin fan, probably like that's your guy more than.
But that was probably the film that made me the fan.
Right,
that's the thing. I remember.
But I loved The Man with Two Brains, right? And I used to watch that all the time. That was my movie, and obviously that's a very, very different kind of movie. Though it does have romance in it on a much smaller scale.
Well, I think I can remember clearly. I was young, and the first two Steve Martin films I saw were this is Splash related. On the same night, Roxanne and Parenthood. Roxanne at night, and then my parents rented them both. We were allowed to watch Roxanne, me and my brother, because it was a PG. Went to bed, and then my parents watched Parenthood. Because my surname being Martin, I think someone recommended him to my dad. And the next morning, before they'd take the video back, they're like, it's 15, but it's funny, you've got to watch it. Right. And I watched Parenthood.
Yeah.
I saw that side of him before the wacky...
Sure. Like I say, I'd seen those films too, but I didn't like him like in the way that you like it. I mean, I do like him now. More so.
They're more. I mean, Roxanne's a PG, but that's not really meant for kids.
No,
that's a romantic comedy, almost in the vein of maybe with Harry Met Sally or something like that.
Bergerac, isn't it?
But it's meant for adults.
Yeah.
But I mean, what I like about this film, as we sort of touched on, is it appeals to so many different things. You know, as well as the romance and the comedy, there's the fantasy side of it.
This is Ron Howard's. Obviously, to me, this is what makes him a director of renown to become such a big name in directing. Is that he is very broad in that sense. That he would make movies that could appeal to a very wide audience. So that is very clear, evident in this film. Yeah, and carried on throughout his career.
Yeah. So right. So we should probably wrap this little bit up. But I think everyone should get to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I say 40th anniversary. It's also a part of the Be Kind Rewind series of movies. So again, old films back on the screen. You know, sort of a bit of nostalgia. But if you haven't ever seen it, go along. Yeah. Certainly, you know, and I say if you're a big romance person, this is certainly one for you without question. And if you love the classics like Tom Hanks and John Candy, how could you miss this?
Yeah, and it is like I said, it's one of those that I'm so glad it's on, but I wouldn't have expected this one to be shown, and I'm glad. It's
like I say, it's certainly, you know, it's an anniversary movie. Yeah, so it deserves, like you say, it definitely deserves. To be on the big screen.
One little last story from the film. Yeah. There's a scene where Tom Hanks and John Candy are playing squash. I think Dan might put this in one of your posts. Right. John Candy's really tired in the scene.
Yeah, I remember this scene really well.
Yeah, but in fact, he was really hungover because he'd been out with Jack Nicholson the night before, and Jack Nicholson got him really drunk. Yeah. And apparently, there was a little bit of tension on set because Ron Howard wasn't happy. He was, and they made him do it, and the performance comes out amazingly. Yeah. And there's a scene where the ball hits him in the head. They didn't expect to get that, but you look at his reaction. That's what a great comedy actor he was. He just does it. Just does the brilliant scene, brilliant film, and it's on May the 31st.
That's right.
6 p.m. a Friday night. Yeah. Get yourselves there. I'm going to do my very best to be there. I'm meant to be at work, but we'll see what happens.
You're meant to be at the cinema.
I'm going to be there. And do you want to quickly mention what else is coming up sort of in that around that week, really?
Okay, so that week, what do we have? So we have Love Lies Bleeding is the movie, I think, of the new movie. So pretty big. I think doing well at the cinema. Big sort of thriller.
It's been out in America. It's not out.
Is it not out? It's not out yet. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I had seen reviews though of it. I think so online and stuff. People chatting about it, talking about it. So who's in that one? So we've got Kristen Stewart, I think, Ed Harris. Okay. The other female lead, sadly I can't remember her name.
Kind of an unknown.
It was in The Mandalorian, I think, or at least one of the Star Wars TV programs. Maybe not Mandalorian, but one of them.
I looked her up and she's not done many movies. But it's the director of
so is it Rose Glass who directed Saint Maud? Did you just say that? Did you? Yeah, Saint Maud. So it was that psychological horror film from a few years back. I think this is her second movie.
I think so, yeah.
So sophomore film. Looks
really good reviews.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, really good reviews. Looks good. Like, if you like your sort of actiony, thrillery kind of movies, especially female leads. So got a lot of girl power in it, I'm sure. It's about I can't quite remember the plot of the film necessarily.
Well, what we'll do, right? We'll in a minute. And we'll cut to the trailer for this movie, and then I'll do a review of it.
Excellent.
Because I will see this film before I finish recording this podcast.
Excellent.
And the co-star is Katie M. O'Brien.
That's the one.
Who very familiar face. She was in The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Ant-Man and two of the Ant-Man films. And she's going to be one of the stars in the forthcoming ridiculous sequel, Twisters. To Twister,
yes,
which
90s classic.
Yeah, I'm all over that. That'd be rubbish, but I want to see it. So I will. I'll give that a bit of a review. I'll try a one-man review if I can't grab anyone else who's seen it. Anything else around that time?
So Horde is another movie coming out, and that one looks a bit hard, like a bit of a tough movie. I think it's an 18 certificate on that. British movie. Oh, tell you, I'm not quite. Again, the trailer doesn't give much away, but it looks grimy and gritty and tough.
Yeah.
So if you're into those kind of movies,
cool.
I think that's it for that week.
Well, I'll just mention as well some of the classic movies you've got coming up. I'm hoping to get podcasts over the next few months on. There's just a few. There's loads of stuff coming up. You've got to check the website, the King Street Cinema.co.uk.
Probably.
Type in King Street Cinema Ipswich and the website.
We'll definitely.
There's later on in the year. Chris Asker, local musician, funny man, DJ, will be talking with us about Goodfellas. That's not for a while. That's going to be shown in September, I believe.
All right,
Goodfellas.
That's well
away. I'm looking to do an episode on The Crow. I think I'd like to talk to you about The Crow.
Okay,
if that's right.
Yeah, sure.
Because we're the same age,
and we definitely saw the movie.
Yeah,
when it came
not
out.
the cinema though, because we'd have been about 10.
No, I didn't see it at the cinema. Far too young. Well, 12 years old, but no, I certainly didn't. And didn't see it like directly. I think I saw it like a year later.
Yeah, I saw it on video. But that'd be nice to talk about that. American Graffiti is another one I'd like to chat about.
Yeah, I've seen that a couple of times.
Tell some different Ron Howard stories.
Yeah, quite. That's good. That's got a young Harrison Ford in it, which I always enjoyed seeing him in that movie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the time.
And young Richard Dreyfuss as well.
You're also showing. I always get the name of it wrong. The first George Lucas movie.
THX 1138.
So if that's around the same time, we could
71. So a couple of years before.
Yeah, but if you're showing them around the same time,
we are showing them around the same time. So that'd be. I think THX is part of Mother Cutters, which is our season on female editors.
Yeah.
So
cool. So a lot of cool stuff coming up.
Yeah.
And we'll go to that trailer now of Love Lies Bleeding.
All right.
Yeah.
The excitement in the air is palpable. The atmosphere is electric. A celebration of history in the making.
What is this place? You're looking pretty good in there. And some pretty serious lines going. Yeah? Why don't you want me working for your dad? Oh, he's a psycho. He's not that big girl. And you two are maybe together.
you like guns?
I prefer to know my own strength.
It's not what I'm paying you for.
If you touch her, I'm gonna tell them everything you ever did.
Are you threatening me?
We gotta get out of here. Let's just keep driving. I fucking love you, you idiot.
I like you too. You'll regret this.
Oh, yeah?
Little fuck.
Love Lies Bleeding. Yeah, I've seen it, and I have to say, kind of blown away. One of my favourite movies of the year. Kirsten Stewart's amazing, as is Katie O'Brien, and a real dark, scary performance from Ed Harris, who's always been great, and yeah, that really stands out. It's really a dark thriller, and just some very sexual moments, which I think they're kind of pushing to get people in, and why not, eh? But yeah, another one with a great soundtrack. It's kind of a crime movie. I would say it's kind of like if you saw earlier on in the year Drive-Away Dolls, but this one works a lot better. And yeah, we sort of covered a lot of it when I was talking with James. But another one for the big screen. It's got some kind of surreal moments which surprised me. And yeah, that's all the cast are fantastic, and there's a few familiar faces in there who aren't really in the ads or anything. You'll be like, I know that person from that movie. And yeah, so that's showing from the 24th. Yeah, I don't really know what else apart from go see it. And there's definitely, I said it reminds me a bit of Drive-Away Dolls, but this is kind of darker, more surreal, as I say. And there's nothing else really I've seen like it for quite a while. And it's from the director of Saint Maud, as we mentioned. There's elements you can see in that, but this isn't a horror. So she's one to watch in the future. I'll stop ranting. Go and see that. I think the next episode will hopefully be chatting about The Crow. I'll do my very best to get out, because I didn't realise that's being shown on June the 1st, which is the day after Splash. So hopefully we'll have an episode on that. But if not, we'll be back very soon. Check the website, King Street Cinema. Just Google it, the website will come up. Find them on the socials, on, is it X now? Is it? I don't know. But basically I use Instagram, Facebook. It's all on there. They update it very regularly, and there's so much exciting stuff coming out. Get yourself to cinema as soon as possible.